Hi, this is Anthony Parent of IRSMedic, and thank you for joining me today. You know, we have this curious situation where we have a lot of Americans overseas who the IRS doesn't believe is in tax compliance, and the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act gave them some tools by which to compel Americans overseas and those in America with accounts overseas to bring them home to the American tax system, even if they're not American. It's okay. And doing so, the IRS is sort of trying to round them up, to get all these banks to do their bidding and to make sure that this noose gets tightened and there's less wiggle room to escape. To help the IRS in its mission, we have a curious notice that came out, and it's IRS Notice 2002-11. And this is essentially what it's trying to do. It's encouraging U.S. residents in the jurisdictions to provide their taxpayer identification numbers to banks when requested. And then they're going to take measures to enforce compliance by reporting the Model 1 of foreign financial institutions identified. Then they're going to encourage them to not discriminate against U.S. citizens that do provide a U.S. taxpayer identification. Number 4, they're going to notify, if notified by the U.S. competent authority, they're going to take steps to make sure to implement an IGA, amend an annex to the IGA, or exchange country by country information. So, John, what it appears like to me is that it seems like a good thing, right? Because we have 9 months reprieve, right? But then what happens after that?
Well, actually, Notice 2023-11 is a very, very clear statement that it's the goal of the U.S. government to impose taxation on people who do not live in the United States, all right, and on their income that was not earned in the United States, aka citizenship taxation. The context of it is that, you know, under the FATCA IGAs, the banks have an obligation to find and report the taxpayer identification number of the U.S. citizen, meaning the Social Security number. Understand the banks really have no way of complying with that in certain circumstances because maybe the person doesn't have a Social Security number, right? So in other words, in a very real sense, part of what the IGAs do is require the non-U.S. banks to comply with things that are impossible to comply with under threat of sanction. All right, you know, so I mean, they still have the 30%, tax, confiscatory tax sanction. So what Notice 2023-11 is really aimed at the banks, giving them a reprieve, saying that the IRS in its graciousness will not deem them to be in significant non-compliance of their obligations under the FATCA IGAs. But it's not free, okay? They're not giving them a 3-year reprieve. What they're doing is saying, as long as you and the government of the country where you live agree to do the following things, then you're going to get the 3-year reprieve. So I want to pause and I want you to notice that this is absolutely positively an escalation of the requirements imposed on the bank. It's the first time, other than enacting FATCA as law in, say, France, the first time that the country of France now has to agree to go out and help just smoke out those, those U.S.-born people. And, we had on the screen a minute ago, what is it, 3.05, right? That's actually the language coming right from the notice, explaining exactly. Move up a little more.
And here we go. Yep.
Exactly what the IRS is, claiming that these banks and countries have to do, right, in order to avoid this designation of non-compliance. And notice the language that I bolded: encourage U.S. citizens resident to provide U.S. Social Security numbers. Okay. Now understand, okay, that this is an affirmative obligation to go out and encourage. Okay. For example, maybe they take out ads in the local media Are you, or has anybody in your family ever been married to or connected to a U.S. citizen? Okay. Now, notice too is take measures. The language is enforce compliance on the banks, right? So France would have to enforce compliance with U.S. law on French banks, right? Okay, notice that. Now they're saying, and this is absolutely laughable. Encourage the banks to not discriminate against U.S. citizens that do provide attention. Look, let's not kid ourselves. Any rational foreign bank should just kick out every American and be done with the problem. That's what they should do.
Well,
and
yeah.
a lot do. And a lot
and
do.
Yeah, and I think this is, and I think this is what's going to happen. Just like, when the first FATCA letters came out, we started seeing them kind of come out in 2015, 2016. I was actually surprised by it. A lot of this, I was like, no, this is insane. You can't do this. And then the next day, right, 5 minutes later, here they are. So I think, because a lot of people did probably, some people that should have gotten a letter. And by the way, a lot of time has gone by between that first letter. So I think we're going to see a lot more people maybe in different jurisdictions that sort of escaped that first round where there wasn't enough due diligence.
Well, here's where the problem is, Anthony. This applies only to accounts that existed on July 1st, 2014. Now, there are a lot of, I don't know how many, but there clearly are a number of people. And, we talk about France here. I don't know why, because this is worldwide, right? I mean, there's all kinds of people worldwide who have been given reprieves from, giving a non-existent social security number to the bank, right? And, so what this is doing is giving the banks another 3 years before they're deemed to be in non-compliance. Now, what I find fascinating about this is that, this stuff it really gives meaning to the expression, people see what they want to see, right? So we have a number of American citizen groups claiming that this is some victory, okay? Because they're looking at it only from the point of view that they won't be, that the banks are now free, but not obligated to keep them as clients and not be in violation of their FATCA obligations. But this is, as usual, at the expense of everybody else, right? I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. So I regard this, there's absolutely no question in my mind that this is a very, very significant escalation of FATCA enforcement. It's also a very significant escalation on the enforcement of U.S. citizenship taxation in other countries, meaning the U.S. taxation of non-residents on non-U.S. source income. And, why people, can't see this. I mean, it's not like they're lying about this. This is their language, not my language. Okay. It's just that people are somehow choosing to ignore this. So again, there's only one cure to this problem, only one cure. And what is that one cure? The only cure is to end the U.S. citizenship taxation regime. And it is not for all these people to solve their problem or make it better. We don't really hate citizens. Let's make it better. Let's work towards a more perfect form of citizenship taxation. No. The only thing that solves this, all right, in the long run, actually the medium run and the short run, is to end U.S. citizenship taxation. In other words, the world needs to simply say to the United States, you know what? Yeah, you're free to define anybody you want as your tax residents, but what you're not free to do is to define our tax residents as your tax residents. So get lost, okay? And it has to be that simple.
And if you've been watching this channel for the past year, we have been describing, again, the steps and the groundwork being laid and there's nothing, there hasn't been anything in the world to indicate that there is going to be anything other than what we've been experiencing. The IRS sees a target, wants to target. Not sure exactly who's the one driving this bus. Not sure. I don't know. I know it's no elected official. No elected official even knows what any of this stuff is. We're not exactly sure where this is coming from. And this is also the thing. What are we talking about today? We're talking about an IRS notice. An IRS notice is just something written by an IRS employee. Maybe a supervisor signed off on it. What is an IRS notice? Does it have the effect of law? Well,
No,
it sure
the
seems
answer is
so.
it does. Generally it does not. You know, one thing that I forgot to add here is that the banks are required, there's this general, let's reach out and notify, U.S. citizens of these obligations. But what I forgot to say was, and this is in there in the bulletin, in the notice, that they are required to include in their notification links to two different websites, one of which, interestingly, is the 2019 relief procedures for former citizens.
Okay.
So it's also very clear to me that while this is going on, that the United States, I think, is of the view and has adopted a quiet policy of trying to get people to renounce citizenship.
You think it's actually intentional?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. But John, I don't understand why the link to the 2019 relief procedures for certain Americans, meaning post-renunciation, is even part of this notice. It's for that. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, because what they're really saying is, but look, we believe in our laws. We believe in, taxation. We're having a little trouble making it work, because, we've discovered that U.S. citizens might live outside the United States. And the last 10 years have shown that does create a problem, and difficulties with compliance with U.S. laws. And we recognize our laws are obscene, unfair, varying degrees of enforcement, and extremely punitive. But we love our laws because we're America, and we love citizenship taxation because American citizenship is about and only about taxation. So
it's exceptional. Don't forget, it's exceptional.
If you feel you can't comply with our laws, we want you to renounce your citizenship. Okay? I mean, it's very, very clear to me, because the whole 2019 relief procedures, the whole purpose of it is to allow people to renounce citizenship in compliance with the U.S. laws and exit the system, right? So there's no, willingness here to open the discussion about whether there's anything wrong with the structure of our laws. No, it's sort of like, if you can't fit a square peg in a round hole, then, rather than change your approach, it's much better just to get rid of the round hole, right? So, I think that, frankly, that they're doing this to encourage renunciation of citizenship. And so, this is not the only time they've done this. Okay, if you look at the 2023 Biden Green Book, a similar proposal is there, to allow people to renounce citizenship. We have the same thing in the 2015 Obama equivalent, and there is I wrote something on this recently. There's also a fourth example. And if you look at these things, if you actually look at these messages, both individually and collectively, and ask, what do they mean? It's a strong message, I think, from the United States of America, that if you don't believe that United States citizenship is about taxation, then you better renounce.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, so the bottom line is, for an American overseas, vis-a-vis this notice, and when I say American overseas in this statement, and I also include accidental Americans, all that. So for the bottom line, for an American overseas, they have two choices. They either get a Social Security number so they can give to their bank, or they renounce. That's it. That is it. Maybe for some, they can use a self-certification if it can work, but otherwise, that's it. Those are the only two choices for them vis-a-vis their bank.
Keith, I don't know, because, so much of this is contextual, right? What
and
where were they born, and
of course,
and what's their asset level and things like that. I mean, I think that the people of very modest means probably can just survive as an American citizen outside the United States. I think that
that's true. Yeah,
wealthy people,
right? But if they don't have it, what I'm saying is, if they don't have a Social Security number, then they're going to have to get one for the bank, because that's what this notice is about. And if they can't, They have
Well,
to
no,
renounce.
I think there's another solution here. Actually,
Yeah.
that, and I put this in one of my posts. And I think this might be a useful podcast. I'm not suggesting this, but I think it's a logical option. Would be, what the United States clearly has a problem with is any U.S. citizen having any kind of financial connection with anything outside the United States. All right, that's very, very clear, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's simply un-American. So, what about the possibility of the U.S. government creating a new financial institution? Why don't we call it the FATCA Bank and Trust? And what it does is it has its sort of center of gravity in the United States. It becomes an online portal, and then actually require as a condition of getting a passport that any U.S. citizen manages his or her financial affairs only through this portal and only in U.S. dollars. And then, of course, other than that, slight inconvenience, they won't bother you. And, I think that that's actually, they won't do it, but I'm just pointing out that if they didn't want to get rid the people of, rid these malcontents of their citizenship, they could do something like that. Imagine it, the FATCA Bank and Trust.
Yeah.
Have kind of a catchy jingle to it.
Oh,
and I have another possible solution to this, would be this. And for years, I've thought that this would be an option. Now, it's interesting that, the State Department has decided that they're going to reduce the fee for a CLN from $23.50 to $4.50. And I wrote this up, when there was no, expectation of change. But, what about countries like France, Canada, etc., simply negotiate a buyout to the U.S. government of U.S. citizens living in those countries? Just simply buy them, okay? It solves the problem of wait times for renunciations, all this sort of stuff. So buy them out at a discount, maybe $100, $150 each. The U.S. government is not only getting something for it, but they're getting rid of these people who are interfering with the application of citizenship taxation. And then once having done that, it's pretty clear that the tax compliance U.S. citizens living outside the United States constitute an erosion of the tax base of the country they live in, right?
Right.
And
and that's right. Yeah. And yet they're so happy to give it away.
I know, they're idiots, right? And so then the next step would be once you sort of reacquired, would be to simply, say to the U.S. citizens, living in the country, well, you either renounce, you're going to have to leave.
Guys, this is what I'm thinking. I'll open, hopefully people will comment on this. I'm thinking maybe we should do a podcast on, okay, well, let's actually, what to do if this is your situation, and give some perspectives. Like, okay, what if you're someone who has of modest means, someone of middle means, and then someone of very high means?
I think that would be a very good podcast.
Yeah, because everyone's, right, and then I think that would divide it really well, and I think that it could. I think that would be a really great way to show, what you should do. Now, here's a couple of things that, and I just want to conclude with this. And also,
if I may, Anthony,
go ahead.
Before you conclude, I have a question, and it's
absolutely
along the lines is that this is where I'm confused, and maybe the two of you can help me with this. As you know, that former Commissioner Rettig, I think it was last year at one of the hearings, had said that they are not able to go through the FATCA data. It's just too overwhelming, okay? And here is a notice coming out for further enforcement of FATCA. I'm confused. I don't understand. They're enforcing FATCA further, and yet they can't go through the FATCA data. There's some cognitive dissonance there that I'm not understanding.
Well, that's called government in action. And honestly, I don't expect them to actually, really give too much about trying to fix that data that comes in. I don't think they actually can. I don't think there's actually a way to do it effectively to match everything up. It would require some sophisticated programming that I just don't think they have much interest in doing. And really, why? Who cares?
But they will continue the enforcement,
right?
Regardless.
Oh, yes. Right. Even though they're going to require this and penalize you for not reporting things they can't access or understand, they could certainly find out. If they examine you, they could certainly find out on a one-by-one basis of what you did. So no, I don't expect them. I still don't expect enforcement to pop off of data received by them, other than, maybe, something happened when they get a bunch of, sometimes they subpoena a bank and they get a bunch of bank records, and then they assume everybody the bank ever contacted with was doing something criminal. That sometimes happens, but that's not a FATCA. That's not coming from
Right.
FATCA. So
Yeah.
I don't really expect it, but that could change. I mean, maybe they are saying, oh yeah, hey, look, we're getting this data. We now know how to take it in, and now we can run some analytics on it and figure out who to examine, right? And I have to be open to the idea that the government does get their act together enough on that, because the upside for them is pretty significant. If they actually could, if they actually could take a look at that FATCA information, oh wow, they could run that penalty machine on full blast on so many people. I mean, full blast. I mean, it would just be, relentless. And I think that's really the thing I wanted to sort of mention. And well, so how do you protect about, and I think that's something. So I would love to see in the comments, and exactly, maybe some people want to give their scenarios. If a few people want to give their scenarios in the comments below, then maybe we could give you some actionable, some ideas on how to protect it. The thing I want to end with, though, is this, and it's the idea, and I'm still very much against the idea of dual citizenship. I don't believe you can actually have it. I do believe there's an inherent conflict of interest with having two citizenships. We often think it's a great idea, but it's like one of those things, when you have two, no one's really accountable to you. It's like, well, I'll just go here if that happens. And that's sort of the problem I have. And I just want to relay a quick story. Now, we talk about Canada and France a lot. I have some odd connection with Hungarians. I'm not Hungarian myself, but I don't know what it is. Hungarians and Poles, there's just some weird connection. And I married a Hungarian woman. We have divorced. She's lovely. And I actually don't mean that sarcastically. It's hard to say that. But she was mentioning, she was, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Hungary over the summer, and I'm going to go get my Hungarian passport. And my older son, Yuli, said, he got all worried. He said, well, does that mean you give up your U.S. citizenship? And I said, exactly. I said, believe it or not, son, I said, no, you can have dual citizenships and be loyal to two different countries. Can you believe that? He said, wow, that doesn't seem right. And I think there's something to that. And so, for those on, kind of wondering what to do, really question, does dual citizenship help you, or does it help somebody else? That's the thing to think about. That is really where I would focus, when you're kind of deciding what to do. Maybe you do, when you are living overseas and you've kind of adopted that lifestyle, what is it really doing for you to be loyal, really? And the loyalty to the United States of America requires compliance with things that might not be compliable, right?
But remember, Anthony, the United States also forces citizenship, because if you are born to two French parents in the United States, you are forced with U.S. citizenship.
Well, you know what? And that might be one of the things we also talk about, the accidental American, like you're speaking of, Keith, in our sort of solutions guide. I think that would be really, really helpful to folks. So, John, I want to end it with you. Final commentary, my friend.
All roads lead to renunciation.
And all right, and that is I will, and I think the next episode I will show you how I can disagree with you in certain circumstances.
Okay.
So that is going to be my challenge, to convince John Richardson not everybody should renounce who's overseas or has anything internationally. This is Anthony Parent for IRSMedic. I want to thank Keith Redmond and John Richardson once again for giving us just some great content to chew about, and really reporting on things that are so significant. I mean, incredibly significant, but just right under the radar of most people, but not you, because you're one of the smartest people on earth, because you watch this channel and you subscribe. Thanks again for watching.